Okay, we're at 10 sharp, almost 10:01. So I say to people who are joining, or thank you for joining, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you, and everyone, welcome to our webinar series. This is webinar 3 in a series where we're covering and establishing the digital foundation for automation, specifically in oil and gas, and how leaders in oil and gas can navigate the complex landscape of automation with AI and do this very safely. So we've looked at in the previous sessions some reactive maintenance, some proactive maintenance. Now we're going to look at some planned maintenance and such, and how assets or how agents are going to be very helpful. So just that's what we've got in store for this webinar 3. And again, part of a series, we're at 3. 4, we're going to talk about complex scenarios, bring in financial projections and such, and connect with the financial systems. Now, everything here is being made a recording of, so you should be able to get that post for recap. In addition, there are some resources and assets that are related to this webinar that you will find from this QR code. So if you scan the QR code here, you will find a link to other assets that you'll hear mentioned in this presentation series, as well as the follow-up videos will be posted there in the future. So just, if you would, just sit back, relax. We're going to go through this series 3 that we put a lot of effort in. So we hope you find it valuable. We'll do our very best. And so the first 2 series, Melanie Ramsey, who's been a key MC for this, she's out sick today. So I'm stepping up as the solutions engineer to pitch in. I'm Michael Salemi. I'm a solutions engineer exclusively with our energy and utilities practice. I concentrate just in energy and utilities. I live around the Houston area, so I get a lot of opportunity with the 30 years I've been around to see a lot of companies in the oil and energy space. And with me, we're fortunate we have David Vancina, distinguished client architect. And Dave's got a lot he'll share with you. Just for sake of time, he can give a more comprehensive introduction at his session. So to that, let's look at the agenda. So we'll talk about the challenges facing the oil and gas and why, and how this is doing a lot to help that. Then we'll look at an industry demo, scaling coordination across energy, oil and gas today. We'll see a live industry demo on how planning, procurement, workforce, and finance agents work together safely in an automated way. Then we'll wrap with an architectural blueprint that'll help inform you how best to choose your next use case. So it's a really great asset that we found that's very helpful. And Dave's going to walk you through that and how you can use it. So these sessions are really all about achieving scale, speeds, and doing that safely with the next level of automation with agents. And you'll hear that we're not building agents, we're leveraging those that already exist, right? So you will have picked up on that in the first session and the second session. And so I just want to ensure that is the theme here. So while we get started, again, I want to be sure and say thank you for choosing to spend some time and learning about what our capabilities are. We know you have some choices on how you invest your time, so thank you. We will do our very best to make sure that this is valuable. And while we go through our presentations, I want to be sure and encourage you to ask any questions you have in the Zoom Q&A. The chat's disabled. Any questions you have, put them in the Q&A. We have a panel presentation at the end of the session, and we'll address those there if time permits. So put those there. And if there are any questions we don't get to, we'll also post that at that link of any questions that we get. So you'll be able to get those from that QR code. And so I want to start with this quote from the CEO of Saudi Aramco. He's obviously, you can read the quote around the focus on investing in technology and automation. Obviously, those around the industry know that automation is a cornerstone of the industry and such. And so this is just the next level of that. The CEO has been able to capture billions of dollars of realized value. The essence here is they're not chasing AI, they're leveraging AI in a certain way. So I think that's quite remarkable what they're doing. And that's the spirit of what we're bringing with this webinar series. And because of the fact that I'm an industry practitioner around oil and gas, we're really focused around the pressures that oil and gas and the energy industry is working around and within. the next gen of field operations, the future of work, right? There's areas where automation and where technology is providing an advantage to be able to accomplish these things. And AI and data, sustainability requirements, compliance and such, it just adds another layer to think about. In our first webinar, we talked about how an agentic layer is strategic. Then we talked about how we worked with proactive field maintenance and reactive field maintenance across workforce management and AI. Today, we're going to talk about planned maintenance. Planned maintenance are things we know that's going to need to get done, like a turnaround. Turnarounds are traditionally chaotic and high risk. And largely there's a lot of manual activity. In addition to that, most turnaround projects, the industry average, there's a 10, sometimes as much as 30% schedule overrun, and sometimes as much as a 20% budget overrun on turnarounds. So it's an area that could use some automation to remove the manual processes and improve the coordination for that. So these series, we've talked about this fictitious company called Lone Star Oil. And Lone Star Oil COO has put a agentic architecture in place, and he's working with his IT manager and Janice, the lead developer, to solve particular problems. And last week, they figured out how to do better proactive maintenance. The CEO has looked at his balance sheet and what things have happened, and he realizes there's been some productivity gains, and we have some spare time and resources to look at this next project. So we've already talked about the cost overruns for turnaround management. We know it's high risk, complex. So the COO says to the IT director, what can we do about improving our turnaround planning? It really crosses a lot of silos. Janice again thinks, hey, we have a Workday agent. Our Workday agent, I hear, is coordinating employees, contractors, safety certifications, availability. If we bring in the Workday agent with our Joule agent that we worked with, our work order management agent, whether it's SAP, Maximo, Salesforce, whether it's ServiceNow, our work order agent, we bring all these together, and then we bring in our finance agent in the future that's being worked on. While we can leverage assets that have already exist and just orchestrate a solution. So that's what the IT manager realizes for coordination after her conversation with the COO. So she again brings Janice, lead developer, and says, let's work with our business analysts and let's map out this process. And let's see what we can do now with 4 agents, multiple agents. So Janice again is doing what she does best, mapping the cross-domain process so the agents work together. She connects in the workforce planning agent. It's already built. She just registers it in the registry so she can coordinate it. Our registry is our exchange. You've seen pictures of that, and I'm going to show you a picture of that in a bit. So she brings in the procurement agent that we worked with before. She orchestrates this together. She starts mapping out the process. She realizes that there's multiple people that are involved with this. Operations, ESG, plant manager, the operations officer, and then now contractors, Carson, the contractors, months of planning, meetings, orchestration, spreadsheets, dashboards, extracts, refreshes, data analysis, months and months. And again, we talked about the overruns that are more common than you'd expect. And the COO realizes that his oil company isn't performing to his peer group. That's why this is a key initiative. So Agent Fabric is being brought in again. It's already proven itself on the past 2 projects. It can orchestrate, do that safely, manage compliance, reduce the manual activity, and give a very predictable operation. So this is what Janice builds for what we're calling turnaround teamwork. She's starting to map out her entire architecture of what she's built over the past 3 webinars or 3 sessions. She's built a reactive pipeline broker that monitors health assets and responds appropriately in a very fast way. She's built a proactive asset broker. The proactive broker is what we looked at last week, where assets are looked at, their health is monitored to be able to get in front of issues before they turn into complex issues. And then now we're building a turnaround broker. These are all orchestrating assets and systems that already exist. So she's not building any of these other things, they're already there. And so that's the architecture that she's building out. More on it in the next session. We'll talk about how this is built. Let's just focus on the matter at hand, the turnaround teamwork. Brings in the agents, Workday, SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce, same context servers. Contacts are ES&G policies, business policies. Information from Workday contains who's certified and who's available. All the resources are there. So now she can do a simple prompt such as optimize turnaround for refineries Turtle Creek 1, Turtle Creek 2. Also share 3 optimal work plans for each based on contractor resource availability and our performance obligations. So very complex prompts like that would take a lot of manual coordination between those teams. Now that she's put a broker around the existing agents, she's able to just execute those types of prompts. So very quickly, this is a picture of the existing assets that she's cataloged: SAP, Workday, work orders, health monitoring, historians, again, Honeywell, Aviva, Pi, it doesn't matter. Those are all brought together. This is a view of our Anypoint Code Builder. It's a VS Code capable platform that is visually showing her agent network that she declared directly in VS Code. Additionally, she has a coding agent optimized for building these called MuleSoft Vibes. MuleSoft Vibes is an AI-powered assistant for building these applications. So she's eliminating the guesswork and getting more work delivered. That's how she works so fast. So she builds her agent network, and then she deploys it so that it's accessible via a simple interface with collaboration tools like Slack and other collaboration tools. So this is a live instance of Slack where I said optimize a turnaround. That was executed today at 8:51. We now have optimal work plans for Turtle Creek 1. We have optimal work plans for Turtle Creek 2. And then we have next steps outlined and what crew is available and what is the timeline on those turnarounds. So all that planning that would have had to bridge across multiple systems and such is done in minutes. It's pretty remarkable. Janice unlocked others' assets and driving new innovation, turnaround teamwork. The CEO is beginning to really, the COO is really trusting this because it's a class-leading security platform that has all the auditability and traceability that enterprise energy businesses need to be sure they're compliant and, more importantly, operating in the safest possible way. Janice didn't build anything, used our framework, found the other's assets, and then built out her solution. All right, let me go ahead and hand this to David. David has some great things to share with you on how we're going to think about choosing your next use case. Often we see the challenge in choosing a use case is where to start. So Dave's got a lot of experience with that. Dave?
Thanks, Michael, and welcome everybody. As Michael said, we are going to talk, when we look at all of the things that agentic technology can do, the option, we have the paradox of choice, as I say. There's so many things. Often the challenge is figuring out where to begin. The key, as with any technology project, is to start with the business drivers and not with the technology, focusing on what is the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, we talked in that last webinar about the fact that often when you've got a big question like what problem are you trying to solve, it helps to break it down and categorize a little bit and use those categories to decide where are the right places to drill in. We looked at a few different frameworks that exist in the industry. AWS breaks the categories down as customer experience, employee productivity, and process optimization. By looking at each of those and just thinking about which one of those categories might resonate most strongly with your organization at this point in time, it helps to winnow down and begin to focus on what are the right places where you might tackle with this technology. Another framework that emerged from a survey done by O'Reilly broke out into major domains of technical tasks and content or interaction tasks. The technical tasks being things like programming and data analytics and web design and so forth. The content and interaction tasks being more some of the things that Michael alluded to: customer support, being able to research documents on regulatory requirements so that when an agent is trying to solve problems, it's generating content based on existing content, exactly the sorts of things that modern LLMs are particularly good at. Deloitte's framework focuses on value capture areas, cost reduction, process efficiency, growth, accelerating innovation. Within any organization, one or more of these categories typically we find resonate. And so by choosing these frameworks aren't terribly important all by themselves. What is important is using them just to help us focus our ideas and decide what's the right place for us to begin. Now, we here at MuleSoft have developed a series called the Agent Transformation Workshop. And in it, we focus on level setting with art of the possible, assessing enterprise readiness, building out or choosing use cases, the topic that we're discussing here today, and then driving those use cases out into an actionable architecture. So, with respect to use cases, we've developed some tools of our own that we often find are very valuable in just helping to figure out what are the business capability ideas that are worth fleshing out. We call these business capability cards, and we have them for really all phases of business, starting with just general core business capabilities, drilling down into specifics for individual industries, including oil and gas. And these capability cards help us to winnow down focus on what activities are going to be most valuable. So if we look closely at this oil and gas blueprint, you can see that it has categories for upstream, midstream, downstream, sales, retail, chemical, all of the different key pillars in an oil and gas business into areas like terminal management or refinery operations or turnarounds, as Michael's just been discussing. So we use these cards in our workshops to help facilitate the ideation process. We do that ideation using a series of templates. Now, going back to the principle we talked about earlier of making sure that we're focusing on high value business activities for your organization, and specifically when we think about it in terms of AI agents, we have to look at these 5 areas that are general in some ways, but very specific to agents in others. When we think about human roles in an organization, defining the role, defining the knowledge that's needed in that job, defining the actions that a person in that role can take, these are all fairly familiar processes for anybody that's been involved in organizational design or human resources generally. First of all, when we think about an AI agent, what do we want it to do? What is its job and who is it helping? Next, looking at what is the knowledge that AI agent is going to need. And that can be a combination of static information stored in SharePoint, in PDFs, wherever. It can also be dynamic knowledge that's retrieved from your operational systems, like your SAP environment, your HR system, or whatever it might be. So understanding what those knowledge sources are and ultimately drilling down into their technical characteristics becomes an important part of planning. Actions. What are the things that we want this agent to be able to do? What are the jobs that it can perform and the capabilities that it requires in order to do those jobs? Once again, this requires thinking about the kinds of interactions and resources that are going to have to be put at the agent's disposal, not merely in terms of information, but in terms of tools that it can use in order to actually take action. There are some technical elements that we refer to, model context protocol. Michael made reference to it earlier, that allows us to define technical tools that can be used, discovered, and used by your agents. All of this is part of the technical design process. guidelines. Anybody that's worked with AI agents recognizes that giving it guidelines, boundaries that it should not cross when it's doing his job are important. And then channels. How does this agent interact with the people or perhaps other agents that it's serving? So all of these are things that go into defining the agent use cases. Now, when we think about the work to be done, we use worksheets like this one that help us to define the role and the purpose and the knowledge and the actions and the guardrails and so forth. And we'll work with you in these workshops to fill these out for your use cases. And then once we've brainstormed that, we start to think about prioritization. Now, most people are familiar with a chart like this that looks at level of effort and impact. And obviously, we want to focus on high impact, low effort, low risk type of actions. The great news with agentic technology is that because it has so many possibilities and because in many organizations it's so new, we can often find some really high value use cases that don't take a tremendous amount of work, especially for those organizations that have worked with MuleSoft over the last, in previous years, to build up a library of APIs and use API techniques for integration in the organization. Because what happens is those API tools now become literally tools that the agents can use. And again, we've shown in previous webinars how you can easily expose APIs in your organization to be those tools. So, just to wrap up, the Agentic Transformation Workshop is a technique and set of tools that we at MuleSoft have built that allow us to help you move through this process of understanding the art of the possible, determining your enterprise readiness for agentic technologies, ideating on use cases, and ultimately driving out to architecture, which we'll talk about a little bit in our next session. So hopefully you will allow us to engage with you in that process. And with that, I'm going to wrap. And Michael, I think you've got some
Yeah,
activities,
yeah,
right?
that was great. That was great material. Just like always, Dave's a lot of good frameworks that are intended to be helpful for our customers and how they choose a high value way to move forward. So yes, if you snap a picture of that QR code, you can see there's a survey. If you complete the survey, you're going to get a Max plush, right? Just like this. Good guy. Absolutely. I've got a few of them. And if you fill out the survey, it's a simple 4-question survey. They'll ask for your contact info. If you want to share it, then we will make sure you have one of these on the way. Okay, great. Now we're at the part for some panel discussion. So I see some of the attendees here have put in a few questions, and let's go ahead and get to some of those. Dave, I see this question again. We got it on our first webinar. Maybe worth repeating it for those that are new. Like, what's the difference between Agent Force and Agent Fabric?
Ah, yes, we did get that question, and that is a good one.
I hear that a lot.
Agent Force is simply the Salesforce technology that is used for building agents, and it provides frameworks for defining topics, actions, guidelines, many of the things that we saw in the role definition for agents. The Agent Fabric from MuleSoft is a platform for orchestrating and governing and having visibility to the actions of multiple agents across the organization. Earlier in the series, we talked about the siloed nature of agents as different application vendors like SAP, like Salesforce, like Workday, like everybody rolls out. The need for orchestrating that activity is extremely high, and Agent Fabric fills that space. So Agent Fabric is about orchestrating agents, not building them. Agent Force is a really superior way for creating those agents.
Excellent. And I see another question I hear often from some CSOs and the security teams, like what does AI governed ecosystem look like for energy companies and who owns accountability when AI acts? If you have a perspective, I have a perspective. What
Go
do
ahead.
you? Okay, yeah. So my thoughts around AI ecosystem for energy, right? It's about really clear boundary policies, auditable actions, transparent human in the loop oversight. It's not really about limiting innovation. It's more on ensuring every agent decision is explainable, reversible, compliant with safety and ESG standards. In the financial industry, they brought in SOX. We have some for monitoring that, right? This is SOX for agents, is what we've got. And so MuleSoft is a leader around security, connectivity, and such. And so that's what it looks like. And this is why MuleSoft is really the best for this type of orchestration. Great questions.
In your demonstration, you showed Slack as the means of interacting with the agent that Janice had assembled in the orchestration.
Mhm.
And the question was, is Slack the only mechanism? What about say a Microsoft shop that's focused on Teams or somebody that's using a different kind of interaction technology?
Yeah, yeah, it works with any collaboration tool. So I tried to say Slack or any collaboration tool like Slack. So we have connectors for Teams, we have connectors for other things. It could be a website and such. So it's just a simple standard-based interface. It's just, yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost just as easy. So if
And
that's
what
what you want
occur
to see, let us know.
And what occurred to me along with that is the support for the MCP and more importantly in this context, the A to A, agent to agent protocol means that any technology that is able to use the A to A protocol would inherently be able to work with the agent that Janice produced. So there wouldn't even be any custom development or connecting required.
Yeah, precisely, right? So that agent ADA protocol is the language being spoken by. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. We really look forward. We want to make these as valuable as possible to you. So send those comments. Let us know how it could be more valuable or what you want to see. If you think the series has been valuable, if take a snapshot of this QR code. It's the same QR code that we showed at the opening. This brings resources for you so that you can review what you've seen. Our contact information is here and on that link. So take a look. References to resources mentioned through the series is there, and as well as the location that you can find these recordings and stuff. So we encourage you, give us any sort of thoughts you have about what you think and what could be valuable. The next session we have is webinar 4. Webinar 4 is going to be on Tuesday. Hit that QR code. You'll see the exact schedule and be sure and make it. Again, it will be recorded. So again, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dave, for your contributions here. We hope our friend Melanie is well soon and back with us Thursday. All right, everyone. See you next time.
So long.